Hello, everyone. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce Ben Shneiderman from the University of Maryland, who is now an emeritus distinguished university professor in the Department of Computer Science. How does one introduce Ben Shneiderman is the question I was posing to my colleagues. It's pretty difficult. I'm actually going to read a little bit from paper because he has so many awards and fellowships that I literally need to read them here. Ben is a fellow of the AAAS, the ACM, the IEEE, NAI, and the Visualization Academy, and a member of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering. No small feat. Ben is really well known for not just being a theoretical computer scientist, which he does plenty of, and his many, many books, one of which he'll be talking about today, his Human-Centered AI book. But he's widely known for many innovations in the area of human-computer interaction, like clickable highlighted web links, like high-precision touchscreen keyboards for mobile devices, tagging for photos. His information visualization innovations include dynamic query sliders for Spotfire, development of tree maps for viewing hierarchical data. We've all used them. Novel network visualizations for Node XL, and even event sequence analysis for electronic health records. Okay, but my favorite story about Ben, you know I was going to go there. In 1997, I was presenting some work I'd been doing at my very early years of Microsoft, where I was in the consumer division doing user research. And we saw that people who really couldn't use menus, who were new to web interfaces, really needed a small number of options, or they just couldn't make a decision. So I said the infamous words 7 plus or minus 2. And Ben came running, this is my memory, he was running up to the microphone to tell me about breadth versus depth and all the research he'd done on that topic. So interestingly, I'd hired a wonderful intern, Kevin Larson, right after that happened. And Kevin brought he was a great cognitive psychologist, he brought some great systematicity to answering this question. And the next year, to a packed room, we presented our new research that showed that both Ben and I were wrong. And it was wonderful, and we've been great friends, and he's been a wonderful mentor of mine ever since. So it is my extreme pleasure to introduce Ben Shneiderman. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. And that was a very kind introduction. It's just worth mentioning. While I'm proud to say National Academy of Engineering, I'm proud to have played a role in bringing Mary into the National Academy of Engineering. So all those good things. And that story of 1997 is one I tell. I have a little different version, but we'll discuss that over lunch. Anyway, thank you for that. I'm happy to be back at Microsoft after COVID, and it's a place I visited on a regular basis, and so I'm happy to be here and see friends, and happy to do that. So I'll be around today. Thank you again. So I'm always happy to wave the flag of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at the University of Maryland, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. And please come join us May 25th. I'll be there in College Park for the 40th anniversary, now on its 9th director, Jessica Vitak, and so that's the kind of satisfaction you want, that it goes on, and that's a sweet thing. I hope some of you know me from the book, Designing the User Interface, which will play a role in this talk, but its 6th edition required 5 co-authors to tell the story of how this remarkable, modest-sized research community had such a profound influence on the 2 or 3 billion users of the technologies that are in your pockets and beyond. So it's a great story. Actually, I should give a plug for Genevieve Priest's book with Yvonne Rogers and Helen Sharp. They just did their 6th edition, just launched this week in Hamburg at the CHI conference with 350 people at their party. So they're doing the right thing, and that book has had a huge impact as well. So Maryland's been a home of about 85% of the education books on HCAI, and her book remains the current and dominant one, which I'm happy to recommend. But today, as was previewed, we're focusing on a newer topic and a narrower dimension, but the current one. So human-centered AI is a phrase I've latched onto. The imagery is important to me. The ideas are important to me. And what the theme is, it's a way of, as the title said, ensuring human control while increasing the level of automation. And the idea is to amplify, augment, empower, and enhance what people do. If you keep coming back to that, you'll be safe. You'll be happier, you'll be calmer, and if you understand that your purpose is to amplify, augment, empower, and enhance people, it will guide you in a strong and powerful way. And it's a system of processes and ways of doing things that expands from user experience design and other technologies. And it's a set of guidelines, it's a goals, which I'll try to briefly lay out, and it's a set of foundational theories and beliefs. So this talk in general has had three parts. I'm going to talk about the sort of theoretical foundation of the framework, then talk about the design metaphors, the language and imagery you use in describing and designing, and then the governance structures you need to make this happen. However, these days you can't talk about it unless you talk about this fourth topic. So we'll come to that and how these three notions actually are more than ever important and relevant to this theme. So here we go. Step one. There's four parts today, the HCAI framework. And this goes back to, some of you may know Tom Sheridan, famed professor at MIT, who for 40 years ago put out the notion of a one-dimensional model of human control to automation. And there were 10 steps in this model. This was widely believed. I believed it. In the first edition of the book, I described it, and the chapter was called Balancing Automation and Human Control. And the assumption was you had to choose some point where if you increased the amount of automation, you reduced human control. And I bought that. And then I began to worry about this and begin to think, maybe that's really not the only way to go. And by the later editions of the book, that chapter became titled Ensuring Human Control While Increasing Automation. And the strategy was to say, actually, it's not a one-dimensional model. It's not a zero-sum game. There isn't a trade-off. You can actually get both if you think about it carefully. And so that's the way I began to conceive it, but I find it better to put out as a two-dimensional matrix here, where, yes, there are times on the lower right where you want high degrees of computer control and automaticity, typically with rapid performance, such as pacemaker embedded in chest or airbag deployed, within 200 milliseconds. You think, oh, yes, I need highly automated, rapid performance, computer control, autonomy, right? On the other hand, there are times where human mastery is what you want. You want to ride your bicycle, play your piano, play with your kids, and those are things you don't want technology interfering with. So there are places you want to be fully in control. There are places you want to be fully automated. And the conditions for that are a deep issue to discuss. But the interesting place is where you want to get both, where you want to have reliable, safe, and trustworthy systems. My favorite is the camera in your pocket, or a digital camera, where there's a high degree of automation to set the aperture, machine learning and AI algorithms to do the shutter speed, the color balance, the focus, and even reduce hand jitter. Wonderful things. And those can be done in a reliable, safe, and trusted way. However, it's your picture. You frame it, you zoom it, you compose it, and you wait for the decisive moment when the right smile or expression or handshake is in play. And so it's your photo. And then afterwards, you can edit, you can manipulate, you can destroy it, you get rid of it, and you can share it with people. So the social connectedness. So if you look at the task of photograph, you now begin to decompose it into the aspects. And that's where the opportunity comes to get both. You will allow automation for the things that are reliable, safe, and trustworthy, but you'll preserve human control for where creative, responsible, and social connected behaviors are wanted. So understanding the different motivations that users have, and this is the thing HCAI does so well, of understanding user needs. And it's not like, oh, I need to take a picture. No, the picture taking has these different components. Why do I want to take a picture? What kind of picture do I want to take? How do I want the picture to be? Are deeper thoughts. And so you want to get into the analysis, and then you want to get into the control panel to enable users to do that. And you want them to override the focus if they want, and change the color balance if they want, etc. Now, you'll notice in this two-dimensional, there are some gray borders. So there's dangers of excessive automation, okay? And the poster child for this is the Boeing 737 MAX, where the designers believed they could have fully automated system, so fully automated that the pilots were not even informed that the system existed and were not alerted when it was engaged. And therefore, there was no obvious button to turn it off, okay? And led to 2 disastrous crashes with 346 deaths. So that's a kind of overreach of the engineer mentality and the belief in autonomy that does not consider the realities and the notion of the human control. Some have called this parallel, distributed, shared control, but there's a way in which you want to think about what ways humans can override or take control of the things that they need to. There's also a danger of excessive human control, that people do too much with cars and so on, various proposals to limit what people can do. But, the simple example of your self-cleaning oven at home, when the temperature goes above 600 Fahrenheit, you can no longer open the door, okay? Because the results would be quite devastating. Human factors engineering for 60 years has understood this idea of guardrails. That's the current phrase. But the idea of interlocks are, very much a part of human factors engineering, and they are suddenly becoming, an issue of the day of guardrails to prevent excessive human control and excessive automation. Now, the design of such guardrails is not an obvious thing, and understanding how to do it and understanding who and when can override the guardrails is yet a richer design. So there's lots to be done. Just one other example here for this topic is of patient-controlled pain analgesia. If you've had surgery, you may have had the need for morphine drip bag going back to World War II, which had dripped, causing 2 problems. 1, too much morphine will kill you. Too little morphine will not relieve the pain. So the next step was computer control. Automatic dispenser monitors your heart rate and your breathing, and therefore limits the amount of morphine that's dispensed. On the other hand, you may not get enough morphine, and so patients are given a trigger. They can squeeze, and they can get more morphine. On the other hand, because they can get too much, there's a limit to how many times squeezing per hour will work. You can squeeze as much as you want, but it doesn't make a difference past a certain point. And the way these devices are moving are patient-guided but clinician-monitored, where a hospital may have a control center that monitors 30 of these devices. They can monitor their performance, and they can track the data, they can collect the data, and therefore retune the machine learning algorithms to be more appropriate for younger or older patients. Let me take a breath and say, any questions about part 1, about this framework? The response I've gotten, this is a little strange at first to open up your mind to a 2-dimensional model, but I've gotten really cheering thoughts and messages from people who said this really changed my mind and way of thinking, because you have a richer space. Steve?
This is actually more for a future discussion, but I was wondering what are the other potential other axes that you might
Of course, yes.
That would be great.
So if 2's good, then why not 3? The natural one, is you want to make this layered by the degree of harm. So lightweight systems that maybe are recommenders for restaurants are not too serious. Consequential systems like parole or hiring or others, or legal things, you want to be more careful. And then life-critical, medical, transportation, military applications.
I was thinking about creativity, since you've also done work.
Yeah, there's several other dimensions you could imagine, and so it's very worthwhile to explore how there could be a 3rd or 4th dimension to allay these things. I think the issue of harm is particularly interesting, and that's come up. It's very hard to assess the potential harm of a system. There's a variety of circumstances. The EU and the US, policy documents do not do a thoughtful job of this. I've tried to do a little better, and I've written a 4-page tech policy brief for the ACM, for congressional staffers, that addresses the issue of safer algorithmic systems. I would say I've changed my language. To promise that systems can be safe is maybe too strong, but safer is possible. And I think we have to take the humility to say safer is a better way to think about it, more modest, okay? We can come back to this later, but I just want to move on to breeze through, give you an overview first, design metaphors. The way we think about things is shaped, and the imagery here, which is from the book, are meant to show people doing things using technology, not technology doing things to or for people. Okay, so here's the big slide. This is the big takeaway. And the old language and metaphors relied on intelligent agents, teammates, partners or collaborators, AI teammates is a big phrase for some people, autonomy, and then became assured autonomy, and then social robots, which I think peaked around 2019. I think that's come and gone, but it will return. It's one of those zombie ideas that does not die out. It will be yet a new generation of Elon Musks who revive the idea with Optima, and it will go on. But I think the failure of 5 leading companies in this space in 2019 showed this is not really going to happen. And it was for good reason. It wasn't because it was too hard. It's just not the right idea, which we can come back to. Cliff Nass and had made, and I enjoyed my arguments with him for many years. But I won the bet about Microsoft Bob in 1995, and it was shut down within a year, more rapidly than I thought. No version 2.0 of that, because that's not what people want. So what do they want? So the point is to give people superpowers. Did I say amplify, augment, enhance, and empower? Okay, that's what you want to do. So I use the phrase super tools, or that grant people superpowers. The idea of teleaction, the action at a distance is another powerful one. The idea of control centers, and then the idea of I call active appliances. So let's take a look. I've already given my favorite example of the way iPhones or Androids will let you compose pictures, pre-edit, post-edit, amplify, change, crop, all the things, and then, or destroy, and always remember the destroy possibility, or back, or, reset, and then also share with others. The social connectedness is a fundamental human quality, which is often ignored in a lot of systems. Similarly, here, in a digital navigation, I asked for a route from the White House 8 miles to University of Maryland in College Park, and it gives you choices through the city or these longer routes, and you may note that, again, machine learning and lots of data to get the route and to also show you where the delays might be. Do you want to go through the city with a lot of stoplights, shorter route, or the longer route on the Beltway around, maybe more scenic, but actually a minute faster by calculation? But you get previews. That's an essential thing of robotics or anything. Preview the task and what's going to happen if you press go button. So that's kind of an essential part. And then the fact that at any point you can back out, you can stop, you can change. You are in control, okay? So lots of machine learning and AI, but lots of human control. And that's the balance we talked about in the HCAI framework. So you get both. Similarly, for small things like text search, auto completion, spelling correction, and even the more ambitious ones that we see today. But a more ambitious superpower is the Bloomberg terminal, and Bloomberg takes in 1.6 million articles a day, does lots of AI, machine learning, clustering, natural language processing, ranks, sorts, orders, clusters, groups, etc., into the ways that each analyst selects for their own use, okay? So they may be interested in a certain company, in a certain industry, in a certain country, a certain region, and they can tailor their display. Notice that it's a tiled, not an overlap display. It's spatially stable, It's information abundant. Some may complain about the color palettes and the design here. It's a long story, and Bonnie John is at Bloomberg, one of our colleagues who's involved in this, but that's kind of what's stuck and what this community wants. In fact, they want it so that more than 300,000 people pay more than $20,000 a year to have such a thing on their desk. So it's a pretty good success story, and it's generated the idea of Bloomberg terminals for medicine, for transportation, or whatever. And the idea, again, that you personally tailor it to your needs, that's essential. You mentioned the tree maps. There was a wonderful story where early on we had a guy who was in love with tree maps from one of the major train companies, and he was trying to get it adopted widely, and he trained everybody, and it didn't work. And Larry came around, and then it took him a while to figure this out, but he went to 225 managers, and he says, what do you do? I manage wheat shipments in the Midwest. I manage car transporters. I manage repairs. I manage maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. And for each one, he built their tree map so that when they turn on the machine in the morning, that's what they get. And they will right to work, and they see what happens. So it's a matter of the tuning to get the individual's needs. So it's also a lesson for today's AI. It's not the AI which is going to do everything for everybody, but it's going to be the tailored tools that let individuals do what they need. In fact, highly specialized individuals will want that also. Teleaction is the second notion I propose, and your AI friends may tell you the Mars rovers are autonomous. They have to be. They're on the surface of Mars, 200 million miles away, 22 minutes for a signal to reach them. How could they be anything but autonomous? And yes, they are. They autonomously avoid obstacles and precipices. They adjust their solar panels and communications to be optimal. However, there's still 80 people working at JPL to control it. And what are they doing? They're managing the mission, deciding on the goals, taking advantage of opportunities that appear that's surprising, and then they're dealing with repairs and failures. And repairs and failures are central to the success of any tool. You may know the IBM Mayflower automated autonomous sailing ship, which was supposed to sail across the Atlantic autonomously. Well, after a couple 100 miles, they had to go back and tow it back into port because a part had failed. Okay, so those things happen. But most importantly, what these people do are find what they need to design the next generation of rovers. And that's exactly the issue. The human presence to take the next generation, the creative aspects, Steve, that's where, people come into play. And so that's what Toyota discovered when it, along with others, tried to have a lights out, automobile factory. And the lights went out, but then nobody knew what was going wrong or how to fix it or how to make the next generation. So they turned back the lights on. They sent back the engineers to watch what's happening. And so you get that deeper understanding of the balance of what's needed in automation. Other teleaction, you'll see journalists write headlines that say, robot surgeons better than human surgeons. And it's just not there. And that's not what you want. But as the manufacturer Da Vinci says, robots don't perform surgery. Your surgeon performs surgery with Da Vinci by using instruments that he or she guides via a console. Okay, and so it's this remote operation of a console that allows the surgeon to make very precise movements deep inside body cavities with only small keyhole incisions that make for better surgery and faster recovery, as some of you may have experienced. Right, okay. So I think that's the theme there, that you're providing superpowers to experts. And part of my agenda has been to raise the profile and appreciation of expertise. And this is highly controversial. Of course, Kahneman and Tversky's undermined our belief in expertise, as did others. And so the need to restore the belief in experts and provide tools for experts is where I'm at. I've mentioned the control centers in hospitals. Here's one example, a more ambitious counterterrorism control center, people working together, information abundant displays, and that allows the kind of rapid response in important situations. And finally, the active appliances. Every device is getting to be more machine learning and automated, and Google Nest, and your washers, dryers are, you can set it. It's got sensors. It determines, what to do. When is it dry? Does it need to go longer or shorter? Yet you can open the door, take out your favorite shirt or blouse so it doesn't get too wrinkled. Okay? I mean, all of that's part of the design of a good technology, because it assures human control while increasing the level of automation. Okay? It's the theme is there very apparently. And by collecting all the data, it improves the machine learning algorithms and tunes it for different kind of washer loads and different room temperatures and different all kinds of things. So you can have that. I have a Roomba, and it's kind of interesting. It's not entirely reliable, safe, and trustworthy. I was going on a little trip just last week, and I left, and I turned on my dishwasher as I left, and I knew that would work out. I trusted that one to do its cycle and get it done. But I didn't turn on the Roomba because it gets stuck sometimes, or it needs help, or it's a battery problem, or the connectors don't work, or it gets fouled. And so, I sort of said I didn't do that. So these technologies also require a certain degree of maturation to do it. And that's why I sort of focus on active appliances, and I think the appliance metaphor is one that we should be building on. So I think that's where things will go. Finally, the active appliance of cardiac pacemaker. I started by saying it's fully autonomous, but that's the old days. Now the devices are embedded in your chest, but you as a patient may have control over it to set it for different times of day or exercise regimes, etc., or diet and so on. And then Medtronic collects the data from 10,000 of these devices so as to improve the algorithms for younger patients, older patients, different comorbidities. And so I think there's the growing recognition of this combination. While you may have automaticity within short term, you have human control over aggregate behavior and longer term, and then the next generation of devices. So there's a set of things that happen there. Okay, I'll take a breath. Anything else about this? Yes, Jin.
I was curious, you talked about superpower, teleaction, and human control, and I was wondering if you could contextualize this in the social structure, social power dynamics. So when we think about AI, we sometimes give superpowers to the AI managers or the managers for Uber drivers, for example. There are automated systems to tell people where to go and all these things, and it almost feels like we could be giving superpowers to people who maybe shouldn't be having the power, right? So how does social structure?
So we're coming to that in the governance structure. So you have identified one important point, which is there is no single monolithic user group. There are 25 users and different communities, and the manager or the person, the one you gave exactly of Uber drivers and Uber managers or Uber systems, and then still higher levels. I mean, I think you see it clearly in aviation. The engine may operate autonomously on the millisecond or second level. The pilots are monitoring what's happening in the minute to hour level. The ground controllers are monitoring longer, and then the airline managers are looking about, should we divert this flight? Or, there's certain decisions that have hierarchies in them, and so you want to come to understand that. So let's come a little bit to that in the governance structures. But yes, I think I hope I'm making the point that these are not simple design decisions, but I am advocating opening the mind to context of use for variety of different users and different products. We need to get beyond saying, I'm going to build an AI. Who are you going to build it for? What are the use cases and what's going on? I think you see this still, sadly, in the older adult care agenda. the work that I've seen, maybe you have newer and other, but from leading companies, is still trapped in the idea of having a robot walk over to your dinner table, pick up a glass, and put it into the dishwasher. This is really, or just yesterday I saw about training a robot to be able to pick up food to feed people with not having to change from a fork to a spoon to a knife. And how do people actually eat food? And how can we do that for them? Rather than saying, how can we help them do it themselves? Okay? The shift is, how do you promote independence, self-efficacy? Well, my criteria will be self-efficacy, creativity, responsibility, and social connectedness, okay? So actually, for many people, you want to provide self-efficacy, okay? For some people, they'll actually do it in a creative way you've never thought of before. Eating peas with a knife, I don't know. There may be challenges that people adopt for themselves to try to do certain things. They're responsible, so if things go wrong, there are consequences for them. And then if they want, they can ask for a caretaker for help. They may need help, and they want a human caretaker in many cases. So there's ways in which you can build that in. There's a lot about elder care issues. You want to respond, or does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
Ben, I have one.
yeah, easily.
So you gave us your nice 2x2 matrix first, and then now you have 4 things, right? And I'm like asking you, is there a 2x2 for this? Because they feel very separate. Like I don't know how to. Like they feel like 4 things. But there's not really like a set of dimension that I could say, oh, those are the...
Yeah, I think that's
So I want
fair.
the space.
Why aren't there 5 things or 7 things?
Yeah, they don't. I can't really quite see clearly how they each
Fair enough.
sort of relate to the different dimensions.
They don't. They don't. It's another thing, and I'm going to show you yet another
Aha.
tableau of things. But this is a different set of things you're addressing. The first is a degree of automaticity, okay? And here, where the metaphors, the language, and the words you use, and I would say, you're making me think about it, but it forces to consider the context of use, maybe more clearly. I'm not sure, but a fair challenge is to say, why do you have these 4 pairs? Why not 5 or 6? Are there ones I've missed? Do these fit together? And I would say this diagram is, in writing the book and working over, this is actually beyond what the book version is. But I think I went through about 20 versions of this diagram, so I was not happy. And this version is 2 or 3 beyond what's in the book. So yes, if you can find a way to sort this out for me, let me know. Okay, so let me just go on to the next, the governance structures. And this is controversial because it gets beyond just the pure computer technology to the organizational and social and government structures. But I think this is where we're at. And the acceptance of computer science and computing in general, that its products are influential in the world and need to be concerned about it. So there are actually 15 here. And it's another tableau, and I worked a long time to sort these out. And I would say the recommendations, there's 15 of them, there's 5 of them about what software engineering teams can do to support reliable, safe, and trustworthy. And we'll talk briefly about those a little more technically. And those software engineering, there may be dozens of software engineering teams in an organization, and the question I became absorbed and fascinated with is, how do you create a safety culture? There are several languages for this, of high reliable organizations, resiliency, normal accident theory of Charles Perrow, and so there's a variety of, but I chose the safety culture metaphor. We'll take a look at that a bit. And then beyond that, every company, the companies in a certain industry, medical or transportation, form an industry oval where there's a different set of concerns. And then beyond that, we'll just talk briefly about government regulation. So I can't go too far, but there's a few things I would like to stress within these 15. The first is about audit trails and analysis tools. remarkably, I mean, the success of civil aviation and safety due to flight data recorders and cockpit voice recorders is well established. Yet, the literature on that, if you search for it, you'll find patents, but you find very few papers and no academic papers that I could find. There's a little growth of this topic into data recorders for long travel trucks, because OSHA requires reporting hours of driving, etc. So there's some there, and most cars by now have some kind of recorder, usually available only to your maintenance person. So those are controversial. There are court cases trying to get that out there. But this becomes an issue with Tesla self-driving cars where, if you read the very readable 60-page NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board report, it closes with 13 recommendations, among them to have better audit trails. Now, I have, on 4 conference committees, I've approached the technical program chairs politely and suggested they include the topic of audit trail design as a research issue. They've all rejected me. Similarly, the editor-in-chief of the leading robotics, human computer robotics, also rejected that plea. So while industry does take this on, the academic community that's very prominent and visible rejects the idea that there's a need for audit trail or that there's an interesting research question about what to capture, how to capture it, and make it useful. Yes, Steve's looking puzzled. I was puzzled and troubled too. Yeah, question?
Explain why.
I think it's the belief, it's the lack of humility and the belief that they can make a perfect system. And if they put an audit trail, it's suggesting that there's something that may go wrong. Now, the various responses are, oh, well, the cost of recording all that stuff would be too much. We don't have the databases and resources, and it takes so much to record, which in some cases that's true. I mean, a Tesla has 8 cameras, and if you're going to record all that, that's a lot. And the Mars rover people say, well, we have very limited data recording on board, and the transmission to Earth is also expensive. We can't do all that. So yeah, there are some technical limitations, which is why it makes for an interesting design and research question. And what should you record? And how can you predict which things would help in understanding failures and near misses?
So can't they put this in the call for papers? Was that your
That was my request.
And they didn't want
They
to.
did not want to have that topic listed. It was a simple request for one insertion to the 20 topics to say design of audit trails, okay? So there you go. Here's an opportunity, okay? And I think it's really an interesting one. And the benefits of flight data recorders, if you begin to investigate, are not only in the retrospective forensic analysis of crashes, but 2 other things. The analysis of near misses where pilots succeeded in preventing a disaster, and so now you know what happened, okay? That's a pretty good payoff because the number of near misses is about 100 to 1 for failures. So there's a lot more data about near misses in most situations than there are about actual failures. The second payoff, and MITRE Corporation has the job to do this for both of these things, that if you collect the data, you will begin to understand the predictive maintenance requirements for aircraft and see how they begin to fail, how engines begin to deteriorate, how airframes are less responsive, etc. over time, and so you have a great deal of opportunity. A correlate of audit trails is the idea of incident reports. Sean McGregor gets the credit from me. He was at Partnership in AI, left and worked on this idea, now runs something called Responsible AI Collective, which has the AI incident database. Check it out. It's got more than 2,000 incident reports, and now others are beginning to copy this idea. The insurance companies and all want to know what's going on and what failures there are, as we'll get to see. I'll just say about the insurance companies are uncertain, as I spoke to them, working on the book, should self-driving cars have a higher premium or a lower premium? They don't know. They don't have the data. Tesla publishes quarterly reports about failure rates, but they don't open up where their data is. And as I read those reports, there's something a little fishy about the numbers there that doesn't add up to me. But we need to understand better what's going on, if only for the insurance industry, which I think could be a positive force. I'll just say one more. Time is moving on, so I sort of want to get on about and just say for explainable user interfaces, the European GDPR regulation 10 years ago triggered 100,000 papers on explainable AI, and most of them are about what's usually called retrospective or post hoc explanations. Not going to work, and it hasn't worked. Basically, I think there's a growing acceptance that this has failed. This direction has not gone. And to me, it repeats what happened 30 years ago with knowledge-based expert systems and user interface online help and explanations, okay? That what you want to do is have a prospective approach to prevent the need for an explanation, to prevent confusion. So the step-by-step Amazon checkout is a simple example of walking the user through. At each point, the concerns are clear. You can make a decision and you move your way through, okay? Or TurboTax, a more elaborate version of that. But prospective approaches and visual approaches that let exploration happen, to me, seem a far better. And I must say, finally, this is catching on. Tim Miller, who wrote this very influential paper about explainable AI, but now, and I've been in touch with him, he's gotten the idea that step-by-step approaches are going to be far more effective in preventing the confusion that necessitates explanations. This is a pretty big issue these days for me. I don't know if anybody wants to push that, but that's okay. Okay, then I'll just say briefly about organizational structure that I've learned the rules or interesting ideas about safety culture and how leadership has to be committed to it. You have to hire the right people and train them, and the organizations that believe in safety have long training missions, hospitals who train for mass casualty events, and military training. These are active in aviation. Also, there's a lot of training and retraining that goes on. It's expensive. It takes more people, and if you're building up for failures, you need to have extra personnel. So it's very hard to justify to stockholders that you need 30% more people just in case something terrible happens. Okay, that's a tough one. But that's what companies do, and that makes a competitive advantage for companies who are respected for their safety records. So the idea is to shift it to make it a competitive advantage. Internal review boards for problems and failures. Most hospitals have a monthly review board to review failures. Some would say that's successful. Some would criticize there are still many medical failures, and that's true. Very complicated to do all the things that physicians and surgeons do. And then the alignment with industry standards and practices are longer discussions. This is where my heart is, the idea of independent oversight. I stress independent oversight. I mean, Facebook has the oversight board, but not the independent. It's sort of independent. It's a separate foundation funded by Facebook, and it has its independence. It claims that their decisions are binding, but we have to be a little skeptical about that. I became quite interested more than 15 years ago when I was on a National Academies panel studying this issue, and I looked into the schemes for Federal Reserve Board, for example, is independent oversight for every bank. So every month the banks report their mortgage lending, and not each, the Federal Reserve Board doesn't monitor each event, but on a monthly basis is the distribution by gender, by age, by race and ethnic group and neighborhoods. Is it a fair one? Okay, and are rejections equally distributed? The Food and Drug Administration is independent oversight for pharmaceutical manufacturing and meat production, agricultural production. So we see that idea. I think you can have accounting firms, KPMG, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, PwC, could become, which they are mandated by the SEC to have independent financial audits. every publicly listed company must have an internal audit and an independent external audit. A good idea. Still imperfect, things do go wrong, but it works. The evidence is very strong. And so these companies are shifting to do AI audits as well, and they do two things. I mean, because they're independent, they have a different perspective, but because they're independent and they work for multiple companies in the same industry, they bring ideas from one place to another. So that's helpful. Insurance companies, which have been positive in the building trades and transportation, I think could be here again. Skeptics will differ, but I find there's a good case to be made for, as one writer wrote, building codes for building code was the phrase. Non-government civil society organizations are stepping forward, and that's pretty good, as well as ACM, IEEE is sponsoring these standards-based groups, so there's a good effort there. And finally, the idea of government regulation, which industry in the past has said, oh, we don't want regulation, it slows innovation. Not true. Regulation in the US, which for automobile safety and fuel efficiency had an enormous explosive effect on innovation. The European GDPR regulation also positive effect on triggering 100,000 papers on explainable AI. So there are opportunities, and this is what's happening now. The OSTP, Office of Science Technology Policies, blueprint for AI Bill of Rights, October 24th, 73-page worthwhile reading document, which lays out the arguments about how to do it for each agency to do. They didn't overstep their bounds. They described a template and left it to the agencies, SEC, FDA, FAA, et cetera, to find their ways to do it. So I had, in 2016, written about independent oversight, and I talked about the National Algorithms Safety Board as an idea. It was meant as a provocation. I didn't really think you could form such an overarching board, but I did think, it was going to happen that organization by organization that would proceed. So that's the pitch here for the government. There is a role for government to play. Yes?
So web search is a it's existed for a couple of decades now. And
What is
web search?
Web search.
And it's a tool that's, I guess, could call it human-centered AI or in that category. Do you know if there are independent audit systems in place for that technology? And if they're there, what do they do? And if they're not there, why does that not exist? Because I'm asking that because now we have other tools like ChatGPT.
Right.
They're going to be personalized. They're not like, an autopilot in the airplane, which is not for a specific user. If the airline owns it.
Right.
So the audit and the harms are very personal, private. They may not even be exposed unless there's some.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't know what kind of regulation there is for search. I think you're right in saying it very quickly became human-centered. That is, the idea of query refinement emerged very rapidly as a user interface design issue. And the design of queries, yes, it is a straight text box to start, but once you get that, you get a ranked list of results, and you get a set of choices on the side that let you, move the thing along and refine the search. And
It's learning from history. It's learning from history of prior interactions.
Who's learning?
The system is learning for that user.
Oh, in part the system, but I think the designers learned. The designers picked up the idea of, just show 10 search results, have them ranked, and then the more business issues of, do I put in ads up front? How strongly do I signal ads? And then for each search snippet, what do I include there to let people know? These were big design issues, okay? And I would say, a lot of testing got done, a lot of A/B testing, a lot of user studies, and, many people here were very much involved, and Marty Hurst, I give also credit for her book on search user interfaces is a pretty good place to go to work. But you raise a good question that I don't know the answer. I don't know that there was regulation of search. I don't know there's regulation of search. I would say the concomitant aspect of regulation of advertising with search raised many more concerns. And I think Shoshana Zuboff's book about surveillance capitalism is devastating but very worthwhile reading. It's serious, serious analysis. Shoshana Zuboff, Z-U-B-O-F-F. She goes especially after Google and Facebook, so don't worry. But, I think she makes a real strong case about how the surveillance is devastating and really problematic. Very, very good book. Okay, so just, I just wanted to touch in a few minutes here. It's impossible to talk about anything these days without talking about, ChatGPT and its variations, etc. So, I just really to launch a discussion, I typed in to say, what should I talk about at Microsoft Research? And it did a pretty good job. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, it said there are countless topics you could discuss at Microsoft, depending on your interest and expertise. Very generic phrasing, but it did say AI, machine learning. Microsoft's one of the leading companies in the AI space, cloud computing and infrastructure, human-computer interaction, right up there, good news. And it went on, quantum computing and data science. And it said, ultimately, the best topics will depend on your interests, expertise, and the audience you're speaking to. Be sure to tailor your presentation to the interests of your audience, and don't be afraid to ask for feedback and engage in a dialogue with the researchers there. It's pretty good. So, I think that's sort of positive thing. I might say tomorrow I'm speaking at UW, and I did the same thing. I got very interesting variation on the theme. When I said I'm speaking at University of Washington, it gave very generic talking to, like commencement speech. But then when I said computer science, then I got something that was a little bit closer. Okay, so these are very impressive. I'm very impressed. I think they're terrific and amazing. So that's all the good side. And they're imperfect, okay? The hallucinations, the misleading things, the rather very straightforward, uncreative things that are out there. So here's the summary. It's one slide. I go back to the central issue for me is I would probably put the whole list: self-efficacy, creativity, responsibility, and social connectedness. Build those into your models, into your systems, into your user interfaces, and you'll be doing the right idea. So remember that humans and organizations are liable. That's the thing. It's not the machine acting on its own. Those who create it, put it forward, are the ones liable for its use. Now, liability is not a simple issue. In real situations, there may be multiple liabilities, different partners, and different degrees of liability. But yes, remember, it's the people who are important. Corporate responsibility, I added, slow down. I do think, and the Future of Life Future of Life Institute letter provoked a lot of discussions. I thought the letter was imperfect. I signed. And because I felt it was important to make that statement, even though that letter was on the hyperbolic side of future, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be great, and fearful, rather than addressing the near-term problems that occur. I'm more aligned, and their solution was also, 6-month pause, which I thought was overly general also. I'm more aligned and worked with Mark Rotenberg and Merv Hickok. They're part of the Center for AI and Digital Policy in Washington, and Mark's been a long time lawyer, collaborator with me. And they really led it, but I, participated in a 44-page complaint letter to the Federal Trade Commission, which begins with 10 pages arguing that FTC has jurisdiction. It has acted on these issues in the past. And then it goes on to another section. Yes, there are already harms. It details the harms. There's a real problem here, and yes, there are things that you could do. And what it requests is a continuation of research, but a halt of commercial dissemination, which to me is a more nuanced approach that deals with the China card, which says, hey, if we don't do this, then the Chinese will. Well, if you continue research and development, but you don't, now Satya Nadella unfortunately gets on, whatever, it was Good Morning America, and says, the only way to test these things is to put them out in the public for widespread use. I don't know how he forgot about the 40-year excellent history at Microsoft of good testing and proper design. But to me, the current systems are flawed. I probably should have added another thing. The design of the user interface, of prompt user interfaces, the idea of a blank, prompt box is pretty crude. And, that didn't last long in search. You start with search, or if you go to Amazon, you type the word jeans, you want to buy pants, you type jeans, you get some pictures of jeans, but you get a faceted menu down the side that says $25 or $50, 100. Levi's, Lee's, whose jeans do you want? Green, blue, what color do you want? So you get the facets give you the cues for the semantics of query refinement. That's probably the most, if you're working on these things now, build prompt interfaces that allow, the dumbest thing, the simplest thing, and the least design is a prompt blank window. And, it's okay, I have no objection to start, but if you're going to move down the process of refinement for prompts, you need to repeat the history of search refinement strategies. Okay, so government regulation. I'm spending a lot of time in Canada. The Canadian AI and Data Act is currently before the Parliament, which is good. The US Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, I've mentioned. The EU AI Act are all interesting. They're difficult documents. They're long. But there's movement, there's discussion, and I think there's many, many other documents around the world. Japan, China, et cetera, are worth mentioning. And I just close by saying, be informed, be careful, and be calm, okay? This is, we will find our ways forward. Okay, so the summary story is here. There's the design metaphor. Oh, lost my slide on there's the framework, the design metaphors, the governance, and then I just close with this other notion. This is the way I structured the book that I worked on for 2-3 years. We start with the high-level notions of human rights and social justice and individual dignity. That's what we really are after. The goals, I've said already, self-efficacy, creativity, responsibility, and social connectedness. Remember those, design for those. And then the way you build it in is with reliable, safe, and trustworthy designs. And the idea of looking at the levels of where you can intervene organizationally, okay? So there's a whole set of structures you want to deal with. At the same time, as you mentioned, there's different user groups, so Jin mentioned. Here's 5 of the 25 I list in the book, but the researchers get a lot of attention, as developers do. Business leaders, some, policymakers, increasingly. The vast body of users, somewhat, it varies, but there's many other special cases. And then remember, there's always threats. The malicious actors are the ones I think we have the least idea of how to deal with. The biased data and designs are something I think we can respond to. The flawed software will get better and better as these get matured. But the malicious actors are really a problem for me, about whether it's political oppressors, manipulators, terrorists, criminals. There will be people who use this technology in harmful ways. And for that alone, government participation, intervention, regulation may be necessary to stipulate the harmful things which should be prohibited. Okay, that may be useful. And I would say, the OpenAI people have written a couple of really good papers that list and detail the hundreds of potential harms they've considered. I think the OpenAI group, although criticized. The 96-page technical report is pretty impressive. And then these background papers that are generally on archive, unreviewed, but they're pretty deep, particularly the one about harms and the potential harms of these systems. So I think considering the short-term and long-term harms is important, and getting to concrete examples as opposed to the speculative and stuff about human existence. And 50% of computer scientists believe there's a 10% chance of human existence. I mean, this is really irresponsible stuff. So that's the book, and there it is. That's what got me through this here. And my happiness was one of the early reviews was one of the most important AI books, not HCAI books. I'm known in the HCAI world, but there it said AI books. So that was happy. On the other hand, Forbes, which is so widely circulated, celebrated it for its management value, and that triggered a huge spike in sales and interest in the book. I'm pleased that I just a couple of months ago got the award for the whole subtopic of computing and information systems, which are probably thousands of books, but that's the book they chose. So I'm pleased by that. And just, I close here just saying I think the future is human-centered. I formed a Google group now 2 years ago. Last week, I sent out the 100th note. If you're on this list, you got the 100th note on this. And Wednesday, I'll send out the 101st. So the 100th and the 101st summarize the 2 years. And the one on Wednesday will highlight the most, 8 or so most interesting controversies that appeared. I do have a Twitter account, but I'm sort of less enthusiastic about recommending that. The website, Mengnan does, keep up a list of, research centers, courses taught, events, and other activities. So that's an easy way, and if you have an event, please send him a note and post it. You can get the book is very reasonably priced. It's like $25 on Amazon for a full color hardcover book, and so you can get it there. But if you want to order through Oxford, you'll pay shipping, but here's 30% off for the prompt. But I'm pleased about the warm reception for the book and the topic. There are 3,200 people on the email list now, so for the Google group, so it's good. You only get one email a week from me. All the feedback and comments come to me, and then I summarize the controversies and put out what people are saying in a compact way. People have written me very nice letters, so you can join that list if you like and just go there and sign up. It's better if you sign up with a Gmail address, I'm sorry to say, because you get access to the past records. So that's my story. The future is human-centered. I believe in a happy outcome if we all get it together and work on this. There are dangers, there are threats, but let's not, let's remain calm and let's work this through as we have for other challenges. Thank you for your time and attention. And thank you for the remote audience of 20 people. I'm pleased to see some names I appreciate.
I've been watching the chat channel. There are no questions in the chat channels.
Okay.
Do we have other questions in the room?
Oh,
Steve.
Start one. One of the things that you talked about before that I think is an opportunity is the sort of education changes that might need to take place.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things of large language model beliefs is that, I can't give an exam anymore. My students will cheat. Well, to me, this replicates the electronic calculator of 40 years ago. And what it should do, is raise the expectations of instructors about what students can do. So in a discussion last week, some educator said he can no longer give an exam, or a take-home exam, or anything, because I said, okay, what's your exam question? Well, what are the 5 causes of blah, okay? I said, okay, put that into ChatGPT, print it out and give it to all the students, and then ask them to write why ChatGPT was wrong on any one of these things or what it missed. Okay, so now you're sort of raising the expectations. You're assuming the tool.
Except it's pretty good at that too.
What's that?
It's pretty good at that too. If you ask it to be self-critical,
Oh, to be it might be.
it's almost better than.
But you know, my other
The
my
actual answer.
you know, my other answer is, what? You're still giving individual exams? What kind of a teacher are you? I mean, I think team projects are certainly the way I preferred to move my class forward, and I expected a high level of performance of teams of 3 to 5 students to produce essentially a conference, CHI paper or something like that, submissible, a Viz conference paper. And I used to believe that 1 out of 10 of such projects would have something publishable. My best year was 5 out of 7 got published in peer-reviewed conferences or journals, okay? Yeah, it took a little more after the end of the semester. It's a little too busy there, but you want to build that into the process and the expectations. I have expectations, my students, these are graduate students, but also with undergraduates, it's worked, that they will produce something novel and publishable. That's what I want to see. So I think you can, and ChatGPT, bring it on and put it to work, Okay, yeah. I had a little contest for the 100th, note in the series. I offered students, I said, write me a 400-word summary of your research on human-centered AI, and I arranged with the publisher. We'll give awards to the 3 best and so on. I got quite a nice bunch, and I've been reading them this weekend. So it's pretty interesting. And I wrote then, as I was doing, you're welcome to do this with collaboration with people or use ChatGPT. Okay, that's fine. Just it has to be a truthful report about your work. That's what it has to be. But use whatever way to communicate the ideas in a forceful way. So it's kind of interesting to see what happens. Yeah, Natalie?
Yeah, I wonder if you had this sort of discussion argument. So when people sort of tell you, all of this like human-centered interaction with AI is sort of an intermediary step, because in the future, AI will be so perfect, you don't need this, right? At the rate of how it improves and so on. So I just wonder, and basically to be blunt, the pitch is, well, okay, right now you're not looking far enough, right? Because right now it's not perfect, but in like 10 years it's gonna be perfect. So what's your
ammunition?
Ben, help me.
Well, my response
What is it that you say?
what are you doing? You have such low respect for human expertise and human creative capacity? I can't understand how you would design something under the assumption that people are so limited. People have repeatedly shown themselves to be creative and put together. I mean, my favorite example is the camera in 1839, right? Okay, Daguerre invents the camera. Paul Delaroche, famed French painter, says, from today, painting is dead. Okay? You don't need painters, you don't need painting anymore, okay? So what happens? The role of painting had been partially to make portraits of royalty and to make portraits of their homes or their possessions, okay, or their families or things like that. So yeah, you now make it possible to automate that process, okay? What it does, though, is it democratizes the process. Rather than royalty only, as I described last night, by the time of the Civil War, 1860, every soldier, gets a photograph taken, and it's put into a very precious little cabinet case with felt lining, and families hold this as a keepsake, okay? And so it becomes democratized, and everybody can have a picture of their home and their families now. And that's what happened in frontier US and around the world, where people hung pictures. It then transforms by 1888 to the Kodak camera, the Brownie, where George Eastman enables everyone, and let's say the Lumiere brothers in Lyon. Thank you for not, have cinema create. So you're democratizing the process, and that's sort of, to me, one of the trajectories of innovations, that things that only royalty had become widely disseminated. Now, what happens to art then? Okay, art moves on and says, okay, we don't have to do this kind of portrait stuff. It's like doing wedding photography. We don't have to do that. We can now do impressionism. And so you get this great flourishing, and then follows by abstract expressionism, and on and on and on. The whole movements of modern art flourish even in the period of photography. So I think the same thing happens here.
I love this. So we have to predict the renaissance of the humans, right? Like, what are we going to do after the AI?
I would say the modest renaissance. Right. And I've been writing, and explicitly about valuing and celebrating the capabilities of people. Unfortunately, Kahneman and Tversky's work, so celebrated, undermined the respect for experts and for human capabilities. And I have a great celebration of what the distinct capabilities of people. For me, it's a category error to suggest that machines and computers are similar or competing with each other. Right. Okay, that machines are just tools with no more intelligence than a wooden pencil. Okay? I don't use the words intelligent, knowledge, know, think, for machines. I mean, it's in the 6th edition of my book, I never used those phrases. I was careful to avoid all of that. So I'm on the more hopeful side. Mary.
We have some questions in the chat. Would you be willing to entertain them?
Sure.
I don't know, Ed, are you still online? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
The question. So basically, you had a dialogue recently with Michael Muller about anthropomorphization in the way that chat is used, and there was an interesting sort of back and forth with Michael. And I'm just curious if your thoughts have evolved at all on that topic since that discussion with Michael. I mean, this is just I'm just curious about what you're thinking now.
Thank you, Ed. Good to see you, and thank you for your important work over these years. Yeah, that discussion was pretty fresh. It was really in March. It was a very lively email discussion, which I distilled into a more readable linear dialogue with sections, and then the editors took it another step, put it out there in a good way. They were really helpful in making that happen. And then 4 people so far have written extensive commentaries. There's a 5th hidden away in the commentaries, in the comments section. Yeah, so I have evolved a bit. I think I've strengthened my belief, but I think there's a more nuanced position that Michael was arguing for, that we should consider it an open question and we should conduct research about AI, about anthropomorphic characters. Mary Lou Maher's comment mistook what I wrote. And she was thinking I was opposing anthropomorphism. I wasn't opposing anthropomorphism. I was suggesting there's a better way of doing it. And in my side discussion with Nathan Boss at Johns Hopkins, as I was writing about to clarify this point, I adopted a shorthand form which turns out to have been very helpful. So instead of these long, cumbersome phrases, I said, look, the battle is between ant-morph and der-man, direct manipulation, okay? So that became a better way to frame it, ant-morph and der-man. And so, I think very clearly, anthropomorphic approaches have worked for Siri and Alexa because of voice, which is a different category of interface design. So it hasn't generalized. And in telephone interfaces, they've moved often from using I to just saying, you can, if you press 3 to do this. So they've often shifted to the you, or that's what consumers tend to stick with and appreciate. The direct manipulation is what I see on almost every one of the 2 million apps, on the Apple iStore or Android stores, that people want to have the sense of self-efficacy, of their empowerment to do things. And so they want, to do it. It very much repeats the story of the bank machine, which I don't think I mentioned in that dialogue, but 45 years ago, I was a consultant for Citibank in New York about developing bank machines. And so the anthropomorphic bank machine was there. Tilly the teller, Harvey Woolbanker, Bob the Bank of Baltimore, and these kind of joking things faded very quickly. And they became very clear. Do you want $60 cash? You want withdraw or deposit. You have a few clicks because people don't want the distraction of a social dialogue. They want to get their job done. They've walked up with the intention. Their intent is not to have a social relationship. Their intent is to get $60. And so 2 clicks and you're out is what they want. And that became the dominant form. In fact, it used to be called automated teller machines, ATMs. But no, they are now advanced transaction machines. Okay, so the labels change. Also, I might say, while I was writing the book and I was in touch with the people at the Robotics Industry Association, now called the Association for Advancement of Automation. Okay, so I see the shift happening, that there's a growing awareness that the anthropomorphic model is a loser. And I'm guided by Lewis Mumford, my hero. Ed, maybe you take a look at his book, Techniques in Civilization. Page 43 is the chapter called The Obstacle of Animism. The Obstacle of Animism. And it relates how every technology goes through an early phase of mimicking human form, because that's the classic model. It's suboptimal. And so eventually it fades in favor of something that's true to the technology and serves human needs. I'll take a breath. Ed, you want to respond?
I think as much as anything, I was just really curious where you were sitting on this. I mean, I would reply, in my view, one of the things that's unique about the chat GPT style of interaction is that it is so general. And so, as opposed to, say, the examples of the ATM or the other kinds of things, which are far more very focused on a particular kind of task or activity that you're wanting from it. So I'm deferring judgment a little bit on how well this works, but my experience with playing with the systems is that there is a different qualitative sense of interaction with a really high quality chat interface and the way in which I articulate what it is I want it to do, especially when you have the turn taking. So like the experience of I provide a thing, it says something that's not at all what I wanted, and then I tune it appropriately. And then within 3 turns, I very quickly narrowed down exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, you have narrowed in on what you wanted.
Yes,
you have
a dialogue
narrowed,
interaction.
but you have narrowed, not that ChatGPT has narrowed, you have narrowed down because you've taken action to get what you wanted. You know what you want and what you don't want. So you're asserting your control, I would claim. And in fact—
Correct, but I think it's the same as whenever I'm interacting with another person. I talk to a colleague and they give me a general response because I had a really crappy question. And then I tune my question based on our mutual grounding of exactly what it is I'm interested in. And they say something, and then I respond based on what they've said, and we get to mutual coherence there. So, I'm not sure if there's a funny thing where I'm not sure that the first person interaction equals anthropomorphization, and that's really where I'm not sure. And I think for many kinds of things that you might want to do with AI, that's not the best tool. But for some things, and I think part of the reason why ChatGPT has exploded across the world right now is because there's something there that works. And I'm just,
I agree.
I'm not sure exactly
I did
sort of what's
choke on
best.
your phrasing that it's just like walking up and talking to a colleague. Well, I don't know about your colleagues, but my colleagues are kind of different. And there's a different relationship I have with colleagues. Now, you're right that this discussion, that email exchange with Michael began because I put one 3 sentences in one of my notes that said, I really had trouble with ChatGPT saying I, and I just sort of dropped that off as a specific, and I gave an example of what it, how it used the phrasing of I, and Michael, bubbles up and says, hey, I don't think we've settled this issue yet. Well, I went back in doing this. The first debate was 1992 at the HCAI conference, where Susan Brennan, myself, Abby Don, and Brenda Laurel had this debate. At the time, the guides were these little avatar humans, and Ken in the 1987 Apple Knowledge Navigator all promised the world of these authoritative butlers personified. They're gone. Those didn't make it, and that doesn't work for a lot of reasons that I hope I enumerated in that discussion. But I think you sort of want to get over this hang-up. I hope you can expand your imagination to say, computer is not like a colleague. Computer is something terrific and different, and it can do so many more things, like a colleague doesn't have an information abundant display like a Bloomberg terminal, and ChatGPT should present many more alternatives more rapidly. It's just not an effective, well-designed user interface. It's predicated on a human exchange. How suboptimal is that for an interface, for a high-res display, which could give me a wealth of choices and remind me? And I didn't mention, the catalog of either step-by-step approaches or faceted menus that you could add to prompt interfaces to make them really soar and get people more rapidly to what they want. I mean, this annoying process of going back and forth with ChatGPT and having to guess at what kind of query what kind of prompt I can write seems to me, wagon wheel stuff. Give me a fast interface that lets me choose in the style of, Hemingway and Faulkner or whatever, in, 300 words, 600 words, how long do you want it? What style, what language? There's so many other choices you could ask for in the form of a poem, in the form of a sonnet, in the form of...
Isn't the problem though that some designer has to anticipate those choices?
They
Absolutely.
Isn't the attraction of that empty text box
No.
is completely over?
I mean, it's
Why
a
do you have to
naive...
wait around for
Look,
somebody to anticipate?
how did
Why can't
Alexa
I
and
tell it?
Siri get good? Because they monitored what people wanted, and they then offered the better prompts and responses. That's what query refinement does. We know what the users typically ask in this situation. We can even predict the next word. We're going to give it to you rather than forcing you to think about it. I often find my answer in the query completion. I don't have to do the query. Or it gives me things I never thought of. And it really guides you. So it's going to accelerate the process if you can provide a better prompt interface. Ed, I'll give you one more shot.
I think I'll just leave it for another person because
I love that. We can have a debate. I'll have a
We
debate.
have one more person that was chiming in on this issue, which was John Tong. John, I don't know if you wrote really long, really.
Please send me.
No, that,
That's not here. John Tong.
that's not me.
Oh, okay, John, do you want to ask your question?
Well,
I got time for one
yeah.
more.
Hello, John.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for that talk. I mean, as I understand, you'd like a little more care or more research about deploying these things. And I'm just wondering whether you think companies should coordinate on that research or just feel free to pursue that independently and rely on some sort of external or government regulation ultimately, or just your thoughts about how that research should proceed.
I think the research should be, independent, but I think it should be, it could be published, it could be shared. But I do think, there's a value to independent research of getting off and let 1,000 flowers bloom and explore different ideas. I think the role of government regulation is to limit harm. Okay, so that's kind of a complementary aspect. Okay, how would you limit? So, for example, the idea of watermarking to be able to trace, or simply, is it such a problem? We miss Phil Bernstein, but is it a problem to collect all the outputs of ChatGPT and save them in a file and make them searchable? Hey, it's not that much, I think. It's just not such an impossible burden. We were talking about the audit trails and collecting. High-speed trading is a high volume issue. Yet there's a complete log of every trade that happens because you have to be able to unwind it if things go badly, okay? And so, I think we have lots of precedents for ways in which audit trails and logs and histories can be kept, and we need to develop that. So just to come back to you, I do think, the research can continue. I think companies should go different ways, but I think the role of government regulation would be to address the already existing harms and the potential harms that might ensue to democracy or economies, et cetera, or political structures as well. I think we have serious. Maybe that's a good point. I think you want to finish, or I see here.
Javier just asked ChatGPT what ChatGPT thought of your debate with Michael.
What did it say?
As an AI myself, I would like to offer some additional perspectives on this.
Oh, great.
I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Send it to me. Would you send me? Copy the whole chat and send it to me. Yes.
I have a
One more question. Yeah,
slightly provocative question, but it's just to understand that how you're thinking about this problem space. And so technologies like touchscreen at some point were fiction for us, and so were many other technologies that we take for granted today. And then I go and look at science fiction, and I look at characters like Commander Data or the Star Trek computer. And so, given the metaphors, the design metaphors that you're talking about, do you think all those technologies like Data, they will remain fiction for us? Do you think they're not practical? Or is there a way to approach those really fascinating concepts in a more responsible way that will also make progress?
Star Trek's a particular affection of mine, and it had some wonderful ideas. It was very truly human-centered, I would say. The issues they raised are, to me, the modern version of Greek mythology, of life and death, of knowledge, of responsibility, of caring, of empathy. All those things got treated in a very respectful way. Yes, they had certain kind of things. The tricorder was a prediction of what we carry with us today. Gene Roddenberry was as far as I know, the key person who anticipated that one. Not everything is going to play out as before. Not everything is a good guide to proper behavior. But I'm all in favor of sci-fi as an inspiration and thinking about it. But I'm also in favor of understanding human needs, right? And, for me, every design begins with two questions. Who are the users? What are the tasks? And that's my way. Now, you can work as technology push and say, we're going to build such and such a thing, and then we'll figure out what to do with it. But I kind of favor the way that's worked so valuably to produce the technologies that I see so widely used now. From the touchscreen that you mentioned and others, we were early developers, and we really studied what people did and how they used it. And then what was at the time, 1-inch square buttons were required to get, and there were 10-inch, 9-inch wide keyboards. And we said, what could happen? We would do technology if we shrunk it. And we began to study. We made a 7-inch and a 5-inch and then a 3-inch keyboard. And that pushed us and we found that people could use them. But we then had to develop the strategy that, Steve Jobs visited our lab, okay? And I became a consultant for 5 years for Apple. I was a little persona non grata around here for a while when I returned. But, during those years, I could see how these things were going forward. And what happened, which is still on phones and Androids too, is instead of the land-on, it was a very simple technology shift. The land-on, which is when you activate when the touch happens, we allowed you to move your finger, and we activated on lift-off. Okay, and lift-off became a way of getting high precision, and it allowed the idea that when you're on the keyboard, you can get characters with accent marks and so on, that if you keep your finger on it, you get a pop-up. Don Hopkins was a student then and worked on the pie menu approach. Apple took a linear approach for whatever reasons, but, these things do work out. But we were driven by the way people use these devices, and we studied, and yes, it was slower. It was a linear slowdown as you made smaller screens, but they could still do it. And so, and people wanted to do it. They wanted the portable devices. And we did a lot about sketching with your finger, a tool called Pen Play, or Playpen, I think it was Playpen, right, where you can, and we brought in artists to sit, and they made these fantastic sketches that none of us could do. They did portraits, and, with just their fingers, and everybody was pretty astonished. So, I'm very much driven by user needs and then testing. Maybe focus it, and we'll end, I think, the discussion of older adults. And I think maybe the chapter that's most interesting, well, I shouldn't say it. I love all my chapters. I love all my children, is the one about, it was originally called Caring for Older Adults, but it became changed to Caring for and Learning from Older Adults. And if you shift it to say, what do older adults want? They want connection, they want to teach, they want to mentor, they want to help each other. They want to do things. So give them, and there is a table, in this chapter, which lists 18 categories and about 100 things of what older adults need to fulfill the aspects of independent living, activities of daily life, ADL it's called. But, if you think about it, and then you see how foolish this idea of a robot walking over and bringing you an apple or picking up your dish and putting it in the sink. What you want is and there's a sketch there, your dinner table, where if you're in a wheelchair, it pops up a little washing machine, and it has room for 2 glasses, 2 cups, 2 bowls, and 8 utensils. And you put it in, you push it down, and it cleans. And when you're ready, you push it, it pops up, and you serve yourself. So you can do it for yourself. You don't have to bring it there and back. I mean, this retrofitting into the existing technology is so mind-broken. I mean, if AI people, I'm sorry, too general. If someone were fantasizing about making an automated washing machine in 1880, they would think about robots that took clips and clipped things to a washing line, okay? Or, wrung out the clothes. I mean, once you go to a washing machine and a dryer, you get a whole set of new ideas. I would say also, if I ask people, computing people, is a washing machine or a dryer a robot? Half say yes, half say no. It doesn't have mobility, it doesn't have dexterity. It's got sensors, it's got planning, it's got action, feedback and all kinds of things. But, there is a good sign. We've stayed longer than we expected, but thank you all. Thank you. That was great fun.
Wonderful.